Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at analyzing some survey data and performing calculations on them in order to obtain some summary results. So we have, in this case, some questions and answers of different types. We have some answers that were given with numerical results. We have, on a scale of 1 to 7 in this case, we have some that are given as either yes or no responses, and we have some that are multiple choice with different numbers of responses. Now, we're going to, in this video, calculate the summary results of these different kinds of questions. Now, one thing to kind of keep in mind when we're doing this is that if you have any responses that are not available, you should not replace these with numerical responses like 0, as in like no response, because they will be treated as being numbers and they will affect the outcome of your averages. They will not be ignored if you convert these to numbers. If you have NA responses, you need to leave them as NA. Excel and other spreadsheets will ignore them if you leave them as text, but if you convert them to, like, say 0, then they will calculate them as part of the average, and then your answer will look worse than it ought to, your average. Now, the average function that we're going to use to calculate sort of an overall value for this problem is basically we type the equal sign into our cell, we type out the word average, and then we give the range of values, range of cells in which our average is going to be calculated on. And so if we go through, we just do it one time, average, and then you can actually just, rather than typing out the values, you can just highlight the cells that you want to be calculated. Back to the beginning of your list. And then when you go back to your cell, all you then have to do is type in that closing parentheses and it will calculate for you. Now, once you've calculated one of these averages, you don't need to do it again every single time manually. You just drag the cell value all the way down and it will recalculate all of the averages for each of the corresponding rows. The other way that you can do this is to just calculate the cell, copy it using your copy option right here, your copy option, and then highlighting the cells you want to paste it in and hitting paste. And it will, again, automatically update the line numbers as you do that copy and paste operation. Now, for the yes/no questions, you can't calculate an average because these are text values. But you can use a function called Countif, and it's going to work somewhat similarly, although we're going to give it a range of values, and then we're going to tell it what it's counting. So in this case, we're going to count the yeses in one column and the nos in the other column. So again, to just apply this, we're going to say equal sign because we're entering a formula, Countif. And then we're going to specify the range. And again, you can do this by highlighting rather than typing in the individual values. And then at the end, just do comma, and then you have to put the text that you're counting in parentheses. In this case, capital Y. It's important to remember that you need to be consistent with your capitalization. It's not just a reading thing, but for your count function, it will treat capital Y and lowercase y differently. And then we'll do the same thing for the nos. Again, specifying our range by highlighting. And then comma, and then capital N in quotes. And again, once you have these cells calculated, you can just drag them down until they have counted all of the yeses and nos in the appropriate columns. Now, typically it's easier to compare these values as percentages rather than counts. Sometimes you will have different numbers of yeses and no, different numbers of surveys that you'll be comparing. In this case, even though we have the same number of responses in each of the categories, we still would prefer to convert these to percentages to be easier to compare to, let's say, a larger sample size. So what we're going to do is, since we have 40 surveys in this example, we're going to take our count in this cell and we're simply going to divide it by 40. And now it's going to display as a decimal initially, which is fine. Take this value, divide it by 40. And again, once you set up the formula one time, you just copy and paste it all the way down. That's great. But now how do I get these decimals to look like my nice percentage here? Well, I'm going to highlight everything, and there's this percent sign right here on the tab bar. We're just going to hit that, and it's going to convert everything to percentages. If you want more decimal places, you can use this button right here to add additional decimal places, or you can use fewer decimal places. Either way. Now, in this case, we have 40 surveys, so we're not going to get more than 1 decimal place of difference. So one whole number percentages is probably fine. It's not going to be that far off, or 1 additional decimal place is also okay. Now we're going to use the Countif function in the same exact way to do our multiple choice. We just have more options. So here our Countif function, again, highlighting that row of A, B, C, Ds, and we're going to count the A's, and then we're going to count the B's, and we're going to count the C's, and we're going to count the D's. And in the second question, we also have an E option. And again, once you've calculated these, you only have to do it once. We'll convert to percentages in exactly the same way. We'll take our count and we'll divide by 40. And in fact, since all of these are lined up consecutively, I don't even have to do that calculation by hand myself every single time. I can just drag the formula over, and again, it will slide over automatically. Same thing up here. And then as we saw before, we can convert these to percentages. And in this case, I chose 1 decimal place showing.